Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to do the last two ending options in Dragonlance: Shadow of the Dragon Queen. We're in Chapter 7, Siege of Calamon, and the player characters have taken down the Flying Citadel, and they have their Han and Luke gets a medallion from Princess Leia moment. They're celebrated in Calamon, and they have this choice of hey, let's decide what you're going to do. What is your future, right? And so we've discussed three options, which was restore the Knights of Solamnia to honor, become either knights or residents of Calamon, or become super powerful originators and rebuilders of Vogler, the quaint. And Calamon is this metropolis, this Solamnia metropolis, and Vogler is this quaint little fishing village, right? But let's talk about the last two ending. And so those are the three ending options we've discussed. I want to talk about these last two ending options. And the first one is Clystran, the human scout, returns to the northern wastelands with his Dragonels, right? So the player characters can go with Clystran, right? And this is an unlikely ending because you're like, why would you return to the wastelands, right? All there really is up there is mystery, right? But there were a lot of clues that there's a lot of elven relics and elven power up there. Also, Clystran has a group of Dragonels at this point, right? And another reason why the player characters might actually go down this road is they've seen dragon riders, right? Consaldi Fire Eyes. And with these Dragonels, they can train and they can actually become dragon riders. And they have a Dragonlance. There's a reason for them to do this, right? And so basically, Clystran of the Northern Wasteland human scout represents what if I pursue being a dragon rider, right? And you could essentially your player character could live out their levels 13 through 20 as a dragon rider. This is not going to be easy. They'd have to acquire a dragon. They'd have to get a dragon to agree to allow them to be, to that dragon to serve as their mount, right? And having, experience with Dragonels, having seen Red Ruin, this Dragonel ace, right? It shows them this possibility, right? And they've seen Lord Soth rode an undead dragon, and they saw Consaldi Fire Eyes, one of the Red Dragon commanders, actually the dragon high master of the Red Dragon army, right? So they know that riding a dragon is a possibility, and they have this possibility of becoming dragon riders. So that's one of the endings, which I think is very beautifully crafted, and it's a really interesting option for the characters. The other thing is there's lots of adventure up in the north, in Krynn on Ansalon, right? So finally, let's talk about Tatina Rookledust. The final option that the player characters have is to go off with Tatina Rookledust. Now, she is a gnome inventor, and she did the work. So she created the Fargab, right? And she also a Nary, I think it's called a Nary catcher, right? Which is, so she created these, she essentially creates a D&D cell phone, right? And a D&D parachute, right? And these are doing things that generally only magic can do, but she's doing these things in Dungeons and Dragons with technology. So Tatina Rookledust is an inventor, right? And so at the end of when everything is fixed in Calamon, at that point, the player characters have this option to go back with Tatina Rookledust, and they could say, hey, can we come with you and do invention, right? So if you have, what is, not an alchemist, right? There's a specific class that was brought forward with, I don't think it's an alchemist. It's somebody who creates these like magical devices. But if you have one of these inventor types, a crafter or a major dwarf who likes to create magical items, or even just create technology within Dungeons and Dragons, there's this last option where you're like, what is the function of technology in Dungeons and Dragons? And the player characters can go down this road, and then you would be questing for parts. You would be questing to bring the Fargab and the Nary catcher to different realms, right? You might actually establish trade through the new Spelljammer adventure books, right? And that's another thing is like everything that happens on Krynn, it can connect to all the other Dungeons and Dragons realms through Spelljammer, which we just got, right? And so these are two really unique special endings for the player characters. And I think what really just stunned me was just at the end of this amazing D&D canon hardback, which is really a template for how you create a setting now, because I think this is the new model. Like, settings will be established through adventures, not through setting books, right? And I definitely think this is the best model like that we've ever seen within Dungeons and Dragons. And because it's a 256 page full color, beautifully written, beautifully laid out D&D canon hardback, rather than the old like 64 page floppies or softbacks that we saw in 3rd and 4th. This is the new model, right? And here we finally see at the end of Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen that the player characters have 5 options, 5 campaigns that they can walk down the road of, right? And it's also just an incredible statement on Dungeons and Dragons itself, saying, hey, we can give you a credible campaign, and when that campaign's done, we can give you one more, right? And also, I do think, though, like, it also is like a little bittersweet, because you're realizing we're really only going to do one of these. Like, we can't run every option. And I think there's a lesson in that for life. Like, we make choices, and it shuts other choices down, right? And we have this bittersweet reminder that we are on a clock, right? And and our choices very much matter, right? And it's a beautiful, beautiful ending for Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen. I was so blown away by this book. I really appreciate you guys letting me share it with you. Every word you just heard is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.